Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with, I suppose what's going to be the, wrap-up video for Airspeed Reads Naruto. I just did the Volume 72 review yesterday, and as promised, this is just going to be my kind of in-review kind of discussion video on having just finished the series. So, yeah, it's interesting to finally have this series done because it's definitely been one of my longest kind of running series in terms of the number of videos in the playlist. Just the kind of daunting kind of challenge that I kind of set myself to do videos on each volume of Naruto, and the kind of time scale I sort of set myself, and I think I went way over. I think I initially planned oh yeah, I'll do 2 a week every week and then it'll be done in under a year, but it's obviously been, I think, about a year and 3 or 4 months. I think I started February last year and I just finished now, so considering all the stuff that's happened, I suppose that's not too bad, but I definitely enjoyed kind of going through the series. It's just wow, it was absolutely very kind of just a huge series just to get through, just knowing I had so many books to get through. But it was definitely fun. In terms of I suppose challenges doing the series, I suppose the main one was just that there's a lot of content in every individual volume of Naruto. So that's why almost every video in that series is at least probably 25 minutes. I think there's a couple that are under that, but that was probably one of the biggest challenges, just knowing that okay, all of the videos are going to be at least 25-30 minutes, and I usually don't have a problem recording that. But there was always a lot of setup for these videos, and that when I had to read the volume, I probably had to reread the volume again to just make sure I'm familiar with what I'm discussing. So it's not just a case of I read it once and then I'm reviewing it and I'm just wait, how did that go? Did this happen before that one? And just getting the hang of okay, noting the key scenes so I can refer to them easily as I go through the video, and without it being overly scripted or anything like that. There was a decent amount of challenges doing the series just because it was so much content. I wanted to cover it in as much depth as possible, just to get my thoughts on almost every kind of aspect of the series and get it out there. And definitely, I suppose, initially trying to get that blend between how much of it should be kind of recap, just establishing what's actually taking place in the volume so everyone knows what I'm talking about, and how much of it is just my opinion. I think by the end I managed to get it, reasonably right in terms of, I suppose, mainly noting just the key moments in each volume. But it was always, somewhat of a challenge, just because it is at least, 10 chapters per volume, and a lot of stuff happens in 10 chapters, even though it's a 700 chapter series. Notable stuff happens all over the place. So there was, just challenges in terms of that. And I think ultimately I managed to do it reasonably well. There were a few moments, a few times during the series where I took a break from a while, but then there were also a few times when I really accelerated through the volumes. This last run from about volume 55 to the end, I thought was I did it pretty quick, doing almost 2, 3, sometimes 4 volumes a week, which I think is similar to what I did when I approached the end of volume 1 of Naruto, the pre-time skip stuff. Yeah, just overall it was really fun to read the series in this format, because obviously the reason I did this as opposed to perhaps doing the anime is just because it's so much easier to read a volume of Naruto than it is to watch all of the episodes that are covered in that volume. Just because the sheer amount of setup time I'd need to do that makes it an almost impossible series to do. Just because I need to be watching 20 episodes just for the video, and I don't always have time for that. Whereas, I can sit down and just spend half an hour, read the volume, look over the key scenes so I'm prepared for the video. And then it also just allows you to really, I suppose, go through the series at a faster pace than the anime and really get what's actually happening. So the manga is definitely something I definitely appreciate at this point. So I suppose getting into some discussion on it kind of overall now, I think one of the big things in this is, of course, the thing with the manga is the artist, Kishimoto, who's also the writer. Just how consistent he was throughout this entire series with his art. Of course, it changes in terms of like where it is early on, but I think in or around like volume 10, I think maybe just a little bit after volume 10, he hits a point where his art is just at this point where after that point it's just so consistent for like the entire rest of the series. Like I think especially like post time skip, there's really not a lot to complain about at all with the art. It's just so consistent and on point with almost anything he's trying to show. And I think that's definitely one of the big takeaways from this series. And it's probably something I maybe didn't mention as much in the volume reviews as I went through it that I probably should have. And that is just how awesome Kishimoto's art was throughout. How clean the characters were most of the time. How, for the most part, good he was at showing action scenes. I think perhaps towards the end in the war, there was so much huge and big stuff going on that was sometimes, you know, complicated in terms of like what exactly this jutsu is, that it perhaps got a bit tricky to understand, and maybe that's where the anime kind of has an advantage, being able to show in motion what exactly is going on and maybe devote a bit more time to each attack. But for sure, like especially early on, a lot of the fights are laid out really well, and there's some amazing moments that you kind of always remember. The initial like Sasuke's Naruto attack on Zabuza when they team up, in the kind of gap between part 1 and part 2, the whole sorry, what am I doing? The flashback with Minato and Kushina, and Minato's fight with Toby, who, you know, Madara, who's later revealed, of course, to be Obito. That is just such a memorable moment in both the manga and the anime. And having such high praise for the anime, it was really interesting to see just how well done it was in the manga as well. So a lot of appreciation for even how he does fight scenes, and especially the emotional moments, and like especially obviously having the later volumes most kind of clearly in my mind. A lot of those more emotional moments, Naruto and Sasuke at the end, the stuff with Sakura, the kind of more romance stuff with Sasuke towards the end, very, very well done, and in the emotional kind of side of things, there's like the facial expressions as well. So the art, I think, was just exceptional throughout. And then I suppose what this video is really, the focus of this is, of course, talking about part 2, because I did a video like this when I finished part 1 to kind of cover my overall thoughts on the pre-time skip stuff. So let's focus in on the post-time skip stuff. This is basically volume, I think, 28 onwards. So it's definitely interesting that like it really is like the story of the Akatsuki overall, but you're also, I suppose, getting this idea of like Sasuke and Orochimaru, and how he transitions into kind of properly going after, you know, Itachi, and then how things change once he accomplishes his goal and realizes he didn't know the full story. So, you know, they do later on introduce like a more detailed plot for Sasuke about kind of learning the truth and so on. But I think just the overall plot of the Akatsuki, which is later revealed to be this kind of plan by Obito, which is later revealed to be a, you know, Obito working for Madara, so it's Madara's plan overall. And then at the very end of the series, you get the idea that no, actually, a lot of this was manipulated by Black Zetsu to get to the point where Kaguya could be resurrected. And I think the way all of that works, without just kind of completely falling apart, this kind of really complicated story of like the Akatsuki who've been established from part 1 in detail, and how much of a focus for the very early volumes of Naruto, like right up until like you know, in or around the pain stuff, when like we kind of got the reveal about Toby being more important than we initially knew, that reveal about, oh, he's Madara, it being so focused on the Akatsuki as just this kind of, you know, like shinobi terrorist organization in a way, and then how they later add on to it and actually have it work, and in that it is original, you know, Madara's idea, and adding on the whole idea that the Akatsuki's goal is Madara's goal, which is the infinite Tsukiyomi, and how that all comes about, and how most of the key villains are, in a way, like quite similar in that, you know, they are similar characters to Naruto, but they have kind of obviously taken the other path, and how, the type of character that Naruto is, like if his spirit was ever broken, he would be a very kind of bad person to have on that kind of dark side of things, which is exactly, I suppose, what happened with Nagato with the loss of Yahiko, is exactly what happened with Obito with the loss of Rin, and so on. So I kind of liked how they used those kind of characters and their similarities to Naruto to kind of give him a big character arc when he did encounter them, and just them acknowledging how similar like he is to them is kind of what ended up kind of turning them around. It is the, talk no jutsu thing that everyone sort of, I think, likes about Naruto, but also, complains about in a way, just because it to a degree takes away some elements of a fight ending with, a physical way. But I think especially with like the pain fight, Naruto wins that fight, and then he talks down the villain rather than like just the kind of idea of like, oh, Naruto kills Nagato. Like that's really the other option, like what people were kind of in a way asking him to do. So in a way I appreciate that more, that he makes that sacrifice and like brings everyone back. And then more or less something very similar happens with Obito, who would obviously like criticize Nagato for making this decision. He is also someone who ends up kind of doing that in the end as well, but also ends up redeeming himself in a very different way. So just I think especially the Obito stuff that they did at the end, he's probably one of the best written characters in the show. The manga, the series, just because of how, like, in the gap between, basically Naruto going into Naruto Shippuden, in the manga, that's when we get that flashback about what happened with Obito and the fact that he was Kakashi's teammate, and that's where Kakashi got the Sharingan eye. When that story was initially told, it was just like a cool way to get backstory on like, oh, the fourth Hokage, who we've basically been told is Naruto's father, so that's really cool. Kakashi's past, that's cool. He was teammates with an Uchiha, that's where he has the eye from, and then there's this character Rin, who's like, okay, the other team member. And it feels like the story was told at that point primarily to like understand why Kakashi has a Sharingan eye, and maybe give extra context to Minato. But later on, using that story as like a way to, like, oh, we told you this before, but we never really continued on from there. And they just established that, oh, actual Madara had survived and got Obito involved. And by the end of the series, we're aware that Madara manipulated things so that Obito would basically, have this reality-breaking moment of the death of Rin and experiencing that in the way he did. And it would break him enough to where Obito would be completely in line with his dreams. And then just how, Obito's kind of trying to get the advantage over Madara in the plan and kind of become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki himself. But when he does, he's constantly clinging on to the idea that he is himself. He is Obito. He's not Madara. He's not a nobody. And Naruto kind of comes in and ends up kind of pointing that out to him. It's really well done, I think, by the end, how they, in a way, reignite that kind of heroic spark within Obito at the end. And he ends up being a very key player towards the end of the war in terms of the, obviously saving Naruto in terms of one of his moments when he was about to be killed, but also, giving Kakashi something to do, giving Kakashi the chance to set up that final attack on Kaguya and so on. So that was, I think, really well done as well. And then I definitely will give the series a lot of praise for the world building stuff presented towards the end of the series, with properly introducing us to the Sage of Six Paths and the history of Kaguya and her sons, and then the Sage of Six Paths, Hagoromo and his sons, and how, Naruto and Sasuke are just kind of the next in line of these reincarnations of his sons that represent the kind of the two different paths, the person who uses cooperation and support versus the person who does everything on their own and is all about power, and how that is absolutely what Naruto and Sasuke have been up to now, and then ending the series with the kind of battle of those kind of ideologies, and how I think especially another one of the best written characters in the show, Itachi, how he's killed effectively in like, I think it's the early 50s or something like that in terms of volumes. But he is so present. Obviously, he's an Edo Tensei for the war that happens, but he is so ever present kind of within the series in terms of impact on both Sasuke and Naruto that I really like that the start of the Naruto Sasuke fight is kind of the two of them using kind of their interpretations of Itachi's life, of like what Itachi said to Naruto about what the Hokage is about. It's not like the person who is Hokage is acknowledged by all. It's the person who's acknowledged by all who is the Hokage, and how Sasuke was unable to accept that, and that he was trying to force his way in to become Hokage, and make all the decisions on his own without anyone else's take on things. That was a really kind of nice way to do it, and just I think again like that whole reveal of Itachi's backstory and the whole idea of like how that all like intertwines the Uchiha massacre and how it involves Obito in a way and Madara and so on. That was really kind of cleverly done, and how you also linked in like the third Hokage and Danzo into it, and had it be like the cornerstone of what Sasuke's character arc was for most of the series, which was revenge on Itachi, leading to revenge on Danzo, revenge on the Leaf Village, talking to the Hokage and understanding that the village is something that should be protected, but needs to in a way be like rebuilt in a different kind of way, and with a different ideology, and just the idea of like the cycle of hatred within the shinobi world as like a key thing of like Naruto trying to stop it kind of by bringing everyone together, Sasuke trying to stop it by destroying and rebuilding with him as the leader, which in a way is very similar to Madara and Hashirama's kind of view on things. So that's kind of very well done as well. But there's a lot of, I think, really great moments of just like using backstory and linking it into a lot of stuff that happens later on, like the whole Nagato thing, how important he was presented as early on, but then finding out that actually Nagato has the Rinnegan because of Madara, and in a way that plan is originally coming from Black Zetsu in a way, and it's just a way to have Rinnegan active in the story so that the Ten Tails can be a thing, so that Kaguya can be resurrected. I can understand a lot of people's kind of, I suppose, complaints perhaps about how Madara is so interesting as a villain that him to just be taken out for Kaguya, who's, at least in the manga, is relatively undefined as a character. I think even by the end you get an idea about like what she's about, but you don't get as much context as you do in the anime. So I do feel like that filler arc should have been probably covered to a greater degree in the manga than it actually was. We get the super cliff note version of the basics of the story as we go on towards the end of the series, but I do think we need a context of like seeing Kaguya on her own arrive on Earth, what causes her like issue with humans, because the other thing that I think probably one of the most missing things within the final section is just the fact that Hagoromo and Hamura exist because Kaguya had children. She had children with people. And we obviously know from the anime filler arc it was a human lord character. And they established that Kaguya never knew love, so I think they needed to give that context of like, was it a similar thing to the Uchiha where she felt love for this lord who she had children with, and then something happened there, and because of that loss of love she is the way she is now, or what? It's just I think there's a couple of little things missing there. I don't mind the idea of Kaguya being the main villain, in that I actually really like the idea that Black Zetsu was manipulating things kind of overall, feigning being Madara's will when in fact he was Kaguya's will. And it just so happened that for the most of the story, Kaguya and Madara's will aligned, except the final step was obviously Kaguya kind of being reborn from basically the essence of what Madara was at that point. It's just, yeah, I think to a degree just a lack of, I suppose, ending for Madara's arc for the most part. I like the Hashirama Madara scene at the end and how they kind of both accept that like they both kind of tried to do too much in their own lifetime, but I feel something a little bit more was needed to fully bring together. But you know, I think Kaguya, the whole Otsutsuki thing is interesting. I do perhaps think as well, I suppose, given that I don't really know exactly how it went in terms of like, did Kishimoto know how much extra stuff he'd be doing after the end of chapter 700? I feel he could have set up the Otsutsuki a little bit better, and the whole idea of them being like aliens effectively from like a different world, and the whole idea of the dimensions being an actually important thing. Like I talked about in my kind of confusion with some of the last couple of volumes stuff about like, oh, the moon is the moon because that the moon was formed by Hamura and Hagoromo using the sealing jutsu on their mother. So when Naruto and Sasuke do it and seal away Kaguya again, that's actually in a different dimension. They could have made that a little bit clearer about like, oh, where's the dimension or, you know, world where the Otsutsuki are actually originally from? What is the culture of that place? And why are they connected to like the divine tree about like wanting to collect the fruit, the chakra fruits and so on in each dimension? As we get with basically the, you know, kind of in a way the villains of kind of the last movie as well as the Boruto movie. I still think that's something going forward, like in Boruto and so on, that we probably should learn more about. The nature of the Otsutsukis as a race or just clan or group of people or whatever. But that's just a kind of greater world building thing with the Naruto universe that I think at some point should be touched upon, which I think it will be just because of what they have done with Boruto in the kind of last couple of chapters of the Naruto manga, where he has had this connection with like Tonieri and Momoshiki and so on. So I'm very eager to see where they go with that. But yeah, like other stuff. I suppose if there's anything you can be critical of is definitely that like towards the end of the war, Naruto and Sasuke and, you know, later on Sakura and Kakashi to a degree are some of the only like really like key characters in the war. I get why it kind of had to be the case in that it was always going to be the case where the final villain was a level above most shinobi, and that only Naruto with the full connection with Kurama, only Sasuke with full Sharingan, Mangekyo Sharingan or Rinnegan powers would be really able to take on those villains. I get that perfectly. It's just that there were a lot of volumes where it felt like we have all of these characters present from every village, all the Kage even present. And I liked how they used the Kage. I liked how like the fighting that happens in this series as we go through the Kage fighting in the war and so on. Before like Naruto properly enters the war, a lot of fighting does happen where a lot of the other characters do get their chance to shine early on. I don't think it's as bad because I think they do use the other characters enough, just about, with Naruto like sharing his power with everyone else to allow them to be on a power level where they can hurt these villains. It's just that apart from like Guy going 8 gates and, you know, moments like that, it felt like everything was so much to a degree where we just have like an entire shinobi army just standing there not being able to do anything, and it's a frustration, but it's also like you get why it has to be the case to a degree. You know, like I like at times, as I said, there are moments where you just have like an entire group of like Village Hidden in the Stone shinobi just all using Earth style jutsu, and it's just shaping the landscape. You have all of these characters using jutsu combined together and so on, and again, the early stages of the Edo Tensei versus the shinobi, I like how they do that, in that like Darui gets a fight, you know, Team Asuma get a fight against Asuma, and so on. So I don't think it's as bad as initially seems, in that I get why like more or less, you know, effectively like the last you know like 7 to perhaps 10 volumes have to be so focused in a way on Naruto and Sasuke and everything coming together for them at the end, because fundamentally the series is about them. Our other characters are important, yes, but to the plot overall, Naruto and Sasuke are our key characters, so you kind of in a way had to do all that. But there's so many memorable moments in part two. You know, stuff like the death of Jiraiya and how that spurs kind of Naruto on. He's in a kind of bad way after that, but he's kind of helped by the likes of Iruka, by Shikamaru, and then, you know, trains with the Toad Sages at Mayaboku, and then has probably one of his greatest moments in the series in terms of his fight against Pain and the ultimate victory there, and becoming like the hero of the Leaf Village. That was, I think, exceptionally well done. You even had the moments before that of just him, like, I suppose, proving himself with using the Rasen Shuriken to take out Kakuzu, even though it kind of highlighted that, you know, he needed an extra level to be able to use Rasen Shuriken effectively in terms of throwing it instead of just jamming it into people. But it still was a very cool moment early on. Even Sakura in like the first arc of Shippuden, with the Sasori stuff of just like her and Granny Chiho and that fight. That's excellent in the anime as well as in the manga. Just her really getting a chance to showcase herself. I think for sure I can see some of the weaknesses with Sakura as a character towards the end of the series. Just in terms of her not really getting like her own individual fight towards the end. It's great that they involve her in the final blow against Kaguya, but I feel that like at some point during the war, I would have liked to have seen her fight on her own. Almost like I think probably in a way the perfect one to do would almost have been maybe Sakura versus Granny Chiho, just as that moment of showing that she has kind of, you know, surpassed someone who kind of in a way inspired Sakura very early on in Shippuden, the post time skip stuff. But I can sort of see why. I think in the war, like, we didn't really get to see Granny Chiho fight when she was reanimated, and they more went down the road of kind of having her interact with like Sasori and like Kankuro, which, you know, the connection there with the village was, I suppose, something that kind of needed to happen. So it was one of those ones where like, who could you have really, you know, put Sakura up against? You know, they have her be the one to kind of figure out the whole like white Zetsu thing, them kind of the perfect clones that are really hampering things kind of undercover in the war early on, using her medical ninjutsu. I really like the reveal towards the end that she gets the, you know, 100 healings mark and can use the myopic regeneration jutsu, can summon Kaguya. All those kind of Team 7 team up moments are really, really good. I think it is just that, I think between that Granny Chiho moment and then that big moment at the end of her final power up, I think you needed a middle moment for her. And I'll praise, I suppose, moments, more kind of emotional moments for her, like her trying to, you know, stop Naruto from potentially like killing himself to go after Sasuke to fulfill the promise by, you know, using the fact that she knows he likes her and kind of saying that she loves him to, in a way, kind of, you know, push aside who she truly cares about, just to save, you know, her close friend Naruto. And if that means that she has to be in a relationship with him and kind of accept him instead of Sasuke, she's willing to do that, because I suppose she'd rather have, you know, one of her key friends rather than lose, in a way, both of them just for this promise that she's asked him to make. I like that as a kind of sacrifice moment of her kind of trying to really step up and do something on her own. And I know some people criticize that moment, but I do really like it because it's her really acting on her own and trying to make amends for, I suppose, a heavy promise and a heavy burden she placed on Naruto, and becoming very aware that she did that. So I did really like that moment for sure. What else do I want to mention here? There is a lot of great moments. Like I liked how they used Hinata. Like I think again, like she isn't the most main character across the entire series, but, you know, I think once they did what they did with her during the Pain fight, they always sort of emphasized her when it came to like Naruto and like characters that are important to him, especially like the whole war thing of Neji's death and her being the one to kind of help him, spur him on after that, and especially once the Infinite Tsukiyomi came undone, the very much huge focus on the fact that she's one of the first people to wake up. Her dream is about being with Naruto and so on. And maybe they could have done a little bit more to address it. I think probably one of the main criticisms would be never once really addressing the whole Hinata saying "I love you" moment before. But I suppose the last movie does like an excellent job at establishing their relationship, in that I think for most of the series Naruto is just so not focused on romance in a way that he almost just like puts anything that's related to that aside, because he's so focused on getting Sasuke back, trying to repair the shinobi world and do all this kind of destiny stuff in a way. So a lot of that stuff I think was definitely really well done. The introduction of like I think the Kage for the most part over the course of this part 2 as well I think was well done. How they, you got to know the Cloud Village a good bit. They always kept the whole idea of the Blood Mist Village, and that being an issue with the Mist Village throughout. That was something that the Mizukage was always going to have to like tackle, and she's trying to keep things better. You use the Tsuchikage and kind of establish that he's actually used the Akatsuki in the past, and he's the oldest member of the Kage and to some degree the most powerful. But here's the youngest new member of the Kage, Gaara, coming in and kind of showing him that there is kind of hope for the future in the youth, and kind of in a way asking the question of the Tsuchikage of like, can you like get back to the way you used to be in the past, and how just a little rivalry in a way between those two, of just Gaara helping Onoki to kind of get back to the way he was. And by the end of like some of the big fights with him, Onoki's the one keeping all of the Kage going in the fight against Madara and so on. So I did really like how they used the Kage, stuff like the whole Jinchuriki arc as well, using the introduction of B as someone who's properly learned how to communicate with their Jinchuriki. And I think overall just as well, the arc of Naruto and Kurama like properly like becoming friends in a way, of him initially taking the power from Kurama, and then Kurama just over time coming to just accept that Naruto's a good guy, and that he is a human who he can be friends with, who he can share his power with, who is working for a world that is not just better for like humans, shinobis, that he is in a way fundamentally working for a world where like even the Biju, even the tailed beasts can be free as well. And just how over time they did that, how they used like Kushina to kind of help him get to that point. That was really well done, especially like during the war, obviously when they introduced like the names of the other tailed beasts. I do feel a little bit more could have been done within the manga with the other Jinchuriki, just because the Akatsuki capturing the tailed beasts, most of it happened off screen, apart from like Gaara for the most part. So I will definitely give the anime some props for actually showcasing like how the Akatsuki got certain tailed beasts. In that I do feel that even by the end of this, who the other Jinchuriki are outside of like Killer Bee, Gaara, Naruto, and then the one or two that they mention in a little bit more detail in flashback, like one of the previous Jinchuriki for Shukaku, like the previous Jinchuriki before B, but like the other ones for the other tailed beasts are definitely just not really covered at all, but they do get development in some of the filler arcs. So I'll definitely praise that. So it's one of those ones where just like, I think by the end there was just so many characters, they didn't quite get a chance to, really showcase who they are. And, I suppose to a degree, like, was it important that we got to know all of those other Jinchuriki, like the Three Tails Jinchuriki and so on? Perhaps not, but just giving them a little bit of focus, understanding like what's their unique power, what is their unique take on being a Jinchuriki, and so on. Were there any ones like B who were kind of close to having a strong relationship with their tailed beast, or was it always just they're a container for this weapon in a way? So that was interesting for sure. And just overall, a lot of great fights, a lot of great emotional moments, really good plot, which I think is definitely something Naruto really does have overall. Just a consistent plot that is always kind of present there. you've got a character plot, you've got an actual, just kind of story focused plot, you've got world building kind of stuff happening in the background as well, and I think he does that really, really well, to the point where, like, as I said before, it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of kind of plot holes for the most part here. Certainly some things could use a little bit more development, but it overall does come together in a quite effective way. So this video just doesn't go on forever. I'm pretty much going to bring it to an end there and just say, like, I really enjoyed my read through of the Naruto manga. It really gave me, I think, a bigger appreciation for just manga in general. And I think since I started this series, I have kind of been buying a bit more manga and definitely appreciating the medium a ton more. So it is something I probably will do more of in the future, and in an upcoming video I will be addressing, like, asking you guys the question of, like, what type of series do you want me to do next, in terms of, like, a longer form video series coming forward. So yeah, as I said in my last video, I will be doing one final video to, like, I suppose, properly mark the end of Airspeed Reads Naruto. And what that's going to be is just, it's going to be a top 10 video covering my top 10 moments from the Naruto manga overall. Volume 1 to 72, I'm going to be covering my top 10 moments from this. So it's going to be from the manga, so that means no anime scenes that are like filler episodes or anything like that, extra things from the anime. It's going to be all focused on the manga, my top 10 moments from Naruto. So look forward to that. It'll probably be next weekend, maybe. It depends on if I have enough time to really kind of look back over the entire series and put as much research into this as I kind of probably need to. But probably next weekend you will see that video, and I'm pretty excited to do it as well. So that's been this, I suppose, kind of recap in a way of the second half of Naruto Part 2, volumes 28 to 72. But yeah, it's been a video. Thanks for watching, and bye.